Anybody knows what the UN defines as extreme poverty?
Living on less than $2 a day.
Yeah, something let's use $3 a day, so a little higher. But anything less than $3 a day is considered by the UN, not an organization I typically quote, but this is a good number. $3 a day is considered extreme poverty. What was the percentage of the human population 250 years ago that lived on under $3 a day? I mean, in today's dollars, so no inflation adjusted, inflation adjusted dollars. So in today's dollars, in real inflation adjusted dollars. I mean, think about what it means to live on $3 a day. You can still find people in this world, unfortunately, still living on $3 a day. So we know what it looks like, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's really, and we can't, living in our modern, relatively capitalist societies, we can't imagine what living on $3 a day means. But what percentage of the population lived 250 years ago on $3 a day? In the West, and globally. Just throw out a number.
I think it's 90%.
Yeah, I think 90% is not a bad estimate. The actual number is closer to 95. Almost everybody. I mean, a few aristocrats who managed to exploit people and steal money and have a little bit more than everybody else. They were up here, but everybody else, almost everybody else, 95% of the population, certainly at a global basis, but even in the West, the relatively rich West, lived on under $3 a day. Indeed, if you look at all of human history, and we're gonna do a little, we're gonna go minus 10,000 years. So 10,000 years ago, about the time of the agricultural revolution. And if you look, if this is $3 a day, this is about what income per capita was for 10,000 years. It did nothing. It went up a little bit under Rome, and then went down during the Dark and Middle Ages, and went maybe up a little bit in the Renaissance, but it basically was flat for 10,000 years. We lived at approximately the same level. We basically farmed, ate the food we grew, we got up in the morning, worked all day, and went to sleep when the sun set, because there was no lighting. You couldn't afford any kind of oil to actually light your place. You maybe could light a fire, but it stinks. So it's hard to light a fire indoors. So basically your entire life was work. What was life expectancy
40,
during this period?
40 years old.
Yeah, 40, it's about 39, but yeah, it's a good estimate, about 39 years old. Life was hard, brutal, short, nasty, read your Hobbes. He was right about life in his period, in his time. And, children, what percentage of children made it to age 10? Born alive to age 10. Yeah, less than 50% actually make it to age 10. Most of you would not have made it to age 10. And a lot of us, at least I, would be dead by now, and the rest of you would be middle-aged. That's what life was 250 years ago. And 10,000 years ago. Doesn't matter. Life didn't change that much. And then something amazing happened. Miraculous, one would say. And that happened. We went from $3 a day to hundreds of dollars a day. And in Asia, it took a little bit longer. They stayed somewhere here, and then they went like that. But what caused this? What made this happen? Anybody want to give a date to the inflection point? When's the inflection point about? 1700. 1700's a little early, but not bad, because certainly intellectually, the beginning of the revolution that makes that possible starts around 1700, in the late 1600s.
The Industrial Revolution, 1830, around then.
Yeah, so 1830 is probably a little late, so it's somewhere in between those dates. I like a particular date, and I know you'll laugh when I say it, because it's a nice number that you can remember. It's 1776. Not because it's the actual date this inflection point happens, but because it symbolizes why that happens. And there are three reasons why 1776. One is the publication in England of a very famous book. Anybody know which? Just yell it out. Don't do the hand thing. You're way too polite.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations was published in 1776. 2, the commercialization, the first commercial use of a steam engine was in 1776. And 3, of course, the founding of the United States of America. And in almost all regards, the founding of the US is the most important of the 3. But all 3 are culminations of an intellectual legacy that starts in the late 1600s, continues with John Locke and the Scottish and French Enlightenment. And what is the Enlightenment about? What is the essential idea that the Enlightenment promotes that I think generates that curve upwards? The Enlightenment promotes basically 2 ideas. One is a derivative of the other. The first, the most important idea, is the efficacy of human reason. The ability of our reason to comprehend, understand, know reality as it is. It is a twin to the scientific revolution. They happen at the same time, not accidentally. Newton teaches us that we can explain the physical world. We can explain the physical world by using our reason. That everybody can understand the motions of objects, the motions of planets. That the equations to explain them are not that hard. If you don't know Newton's 3 laws, if you didn't understand them in physics class, it's more than likely that it's because you had a lousy professor or teacher, because it's not that hard. Now, when people suddenly realized, up until then, remember, how did knowledge come about? How did we know anything? Where did knowledge come about before kind of the Enlightenment? How did people believe knowledge came from? Yeah, from a book written thousands of years ago, from mystical revelation, from Plato's philosopher kings, from the Pope, from somewhere. But that knowledge was not accessible to them as individuals. That it only got to them, filtered through the philosopher kings. Call them Christian philosopher kings or secular philosopher kings, it doesn't matter. Suddenly, in the Enlightenment, we learn that each one of us can know reality as it is. We start saying, well, if I can know all this stuff, then why can't I control my own life? Why can't I choose my own profession? Why can't I live the way I want to live? Why can't I be free to produce what I want to produce? To think what I want to think? To make of my life what I want to make of that life? And as a consequence, what we get is a movement for freedom, a movement for liberty, which culminates in the Declaration of Independence of the United States as a declaration, the most important political document, I believe, in human history. They didn't live up to it, of course, slavery and so forth, but as a declaration, declaring that each individual has an inalienable right to his own life, his own liberty, and the pursuit of his own happiness, changes the world. And what it unleashes is the innovation, the profit-seeking, the happiness-seeking individuals all over the West where freedom is allowed. And the consequences, capitalism, and the consequences, a massive, massive increase in our quality, standard of living, a doubling within about 100 years of life expectancy. Of course, now it's of course up to 84, or in somewhere in the 80s. A dramatic increase in the quality of life, a dramatic improvement across the board in human flourishing. Ultimately, it leads to the abolition of slavery, the emancipation of women, and almost every positive social trend of the last 250 years. And there are very few positive social trends before 250 years. What the socialists want is to get rid of this. Because all of this is a product of the recognition of the value of the individual, his mind, and his own life. Because the second idea of the Enlightenment is the sanctity of the individual. That the individual is the moral unit. Before 1776, for all intents and purposes, when you'd ask people who their life belonged to, what would be their answer? Who does your life belong to?
King or God.
King or God or tribe or nation or state or race or fill in the blank with some collective. Before 1776, each one of us knew that our life belonged to someone else. We had no autonomy over our lives. Not philosophically, not intellectually, and not physically in the real world. The beauty of the Declaration of Independence is that it declares that our lives belong to us as individuals. That the king does not own you, that the state does not own you, that the proletarian does not own you, that the race does not own you, that nobody owns you. That you are an independent, sovereign being. That your happiness and your well-being is your only responsibility. And that the job of the state, the only job of the state, is to protect you. Is to make your life safe from the violence, from the coercion, from the fraud that might be committed on you by your neighbors or other states, terrorists, or fill in the blank again. But other than protecting you, the state had no role. It was to leave you alone so that you could pursue the values you believed were necessary for your survival and your ultimate flourishing. Socialism seeks to replace that. It seeks to tell you, no, your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the collective. It belongs to the group. You are just a sacrificial animal for the sake of other people's well-being. No matter if you've studied hard, worked hard, innovated, come up with great ideas, built a company, made hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars. It's not yours. It's your duty, it's your responsibility, from each according to his ability to each according to his means. It's the people who didn't build. It's the people who didn't create. It's the people who didn't make. Your moral responsibility is to them, not to yourself. Your moral responsibility is to give. And if you're not going to give, which most of us would not, then we empower the state to violently take it from you to give to others. You do not have a right to your property. Indeed, the whole notion of private property is bizarre, according to socialism. Property is everybody's. No matter if you actually made the stuff, no matter if you actually built the stuff, no matter if you had the idea for it, it's not yours. It is owned by the collective, by the group. Your life does not belong to you. Your values do not belong to you. What you create and build does not belong to you. Your ideas do not belong to you. Socialism declares all of that belongs to the collective.